for Christian nationalists today to say, that our founders were these evangelical Protestant Christians is just not quite historically accurate. These were Enlightenment thinkers. They had their own suspicions of religion. I mean, Thomas Jefferson created his own Bible where he took out all the miracles.
Really?
Yeah.
He also owned slaves. Pretty anti-Christian.
I would say so. But again, Christianity was used to justify slavery. It was also used by abolitionists to tear it down, right? Christianity was used by Bull Connor and white officials in the South to maintain Jim Crow. And it was also used by Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement to tear down that system. Yeah. So faith, it's really in the hands of the user. It can be used to do a lot of damage to people, but it can also be used to move us toward a more just and loving world.
Austin State Representative James Tallarico there from the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Took me all weekend to finish my very first Joe Rogan listen, and it is a must for Texas progressives. See the link in the show notes. Rogan wants him to run for president. Me, I'll settle for governor. Great job, Rep. Tallarico. It's Monday, July 21st, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch. Rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. The opening day of what could prove a contentious, controversial, and pivotal special Texas legislative session with nationwide implications begins today. What to expect from the outset? Alejandro Serrano at the Texas Tribune says it begins with a very tight clock on a heavily stacked MAGA red meat agenda with two items clearly at the top of the priority list: legislation in response to Central Texas floods. They killed more than 100 people, including dozens of children, and a redrawing of the state's congressional districts ordered up by Donald Trump. The former flood relief already being seen as being held hostage for the benefit of the latter, Trump's redistricting push. For flooding response, broad bipartisan consensus that something must be done. For redistricting, the level of partisan rancor that could bring the whole show to a stop. This zone is fully flooded, as it were, and those two top highly emotionally charged priorities also appear likely to serve as PR cover for the rest of that red meat, requiring people to use bathrooms that align with the sex they were assigned at birth, cracking down on the manufacturing and distribution of abortion pills, and on and on. House Minority Leader Gene Wu, putting aside the fact that the session was initially called to address the much sillier issue of Dan's ban on THC products, points out that the flood has been co-opted by Governor Abbott as an excuse to grant Trump's wish of a new Texas congressional map, noting that Abbott simply acted within his own authority in the wake of Hurricane Harvey in 2017, authorizing relief spending from the state savings account. He easily could have done the same here without a special session. Rep. Wu says, quote, "It's insanity. It's cruel. It's just the craven politics of it. This is why Americans hate politicians," unquote. Gromer Jeffers Jr. at the Dallas Morning News on the opening of the special session notes that if GOP lawmakers fail to grind out all the red meat on the menu in this go-around, the governor can simply call another and another and another. With public education items, including the elimination of the STAR test, property tax reform, regulations on lobbying at the municipal level, and giving Ken Paxton more power to cook up and pursue election fraud cases in black and brown communities, Jeffers thinks Texas lawmakers should pretty much plan to stay on duty through the summer and into the fall. Back to the main focus for progressives, not only in Texas but across the country, the possibility that this redistricting scheme could produce as big as a 5-seat artificial edge for Donald Trump in the U.S. House in 2026, possibly enough to offset the massive losses that Republicans themselves expect in the midterms. The very course of the nation is at stake here. It's the main focus. For those of us who are paying attention, of course, Austin Congressman Greg Casar calls it the biggest thing in politics you haven't heard about. On MSNBC, Casar warns that the Texas push is only the beginning. If it works here, Trump will call for similar moves in every red state in the country, noting that blue states, including California, where fairness in the manner of drawing maps has been implemented, are now at a disadvantage against red states where such inconveniences as ethics and fairness are simply tossed aside. Brett Bachman at Notice says Democrats at the national level are looking to employ a fight fire with fire approach to Donald Trump's aggressive push to redraw the Texas map. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries confirmed yesterday national Dems are considering the viability of similar redistricting efforts in California and New York, as well as a number of other Democratic-led states, including New Jersey, Minnesota, and Washington. Congressman Jeffries says, quote, "I think that if you have a situation where Republicans are unleashing every malignant scheme possible to try and undermine the principle of free and fair elections and disenfranchise millions of people in Texas and beyond that, it's incumbent upon all of us to take a close look at how do we ensure that the congressional map writ large is as fair as possible in advance of the midterm elections," unquote. Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke was on CNN over the weekend talking about this. He said, quote, "I think Democrats in the past too often have been more concerned with being right than being in power, and we have seen Republicans only care about being in power regardless of what is right. We have got to fight back. We cannot roll over. We cannot play dead. We cannot submit to them, as Democrats for far too long have done," unquote. Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher is holding an open virtual town hall on redistricting tonight, starting at 7 o'clock, featuring input from State Representative John Rosenthal, Vice Chair of the Texas House Committee on Redistricting, and Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. Link to that Zoom is in the show notes this morning. Back to the flood disaster and the news over the weekend that what appeared to be a dire list of missing people has suddenly dwindled to 3 after having skyrocketed after a press conference with Governor Abbott last week. So what gives there? Rick Rojas at the New York Times says last week, state and local officials said there were 97 people still missing in Kerr County, but by this last Saturday, they had released a revised figure to only 3. The death toll remains unchanged at 135 statewide. It all appears a fairly routine case of erring on the side of caution. It turns out that 94 of those 97 people were not washed away in the flood, but had been otherwise unaccounted for and thusly reported by friends and family, which of course itself is good news. Donald Trump's big bullshit bill is, of course, a big part of the bullshit that MAGA knows is going to bring the hammer down on him in 2026, thus the frenzy to stack the deck. Evan McDonald at the Houston Chronicle has been looking into the effects of that bill on health coverage, hospitals, and Medicaid in Texas, and it ain't a pretty picture. The new tax and spending law demands $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts over 10 years, with Texas expected to lose $39 billion of those dollars. Combined with changes to the Affordable Care Act, those cuts may result in 12 million more uninsured Texans by 2034, 300,000 of them here in Texas. These newly uninsured Texans are more likely to delay care, worsening health outcomes and increasing hospital costs, since hospitals must provide emergency care regardless of ability to pay. While Medicaid is state-run, the law shifts more costs from the federal government to states and providers. Texas, where the federal government covers 65% of Medicaid costs, could see major operational impacts, especially in children's hospitals, which rely heavily on Medicaid. Our mission here at Progress Texas is to counter the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine. At a moment when funding for public and independent media outlets and media figures who don't bow down to MAGA is under full attack. Progress Texas relies on listener support to keep going, but lately we've come within 3 months of running out of funding. Progress Texas is in the middle of our summer vacation membership drive, and if just 10% of our audience signs up for a monthly donation of at least $10, we'd be good for the next year and we'd be able to avoid going on a permanent vacation. We could use your support now as a monthly contributor. Please join the fight against authoritarianism and for progress in Texas. Right now, go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Bonnie Walton, Shannon Walton, and Lisa Weiss, all of whom are on board. We appreciate all 3 of you very, very much. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Monday, July 21st, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day and a great week. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.